Hello and welcome back to Rap Cinema. Today we will be diving into the shocking story about a virus that has wiped out humanity, with 4 friends who travel several days to elude the pandemic, but after encountering numerous challenges, they soon learn the darkness within themselves may be more deadly than any world-ending virus. As we start off, we're shown a video recording of a happy family at the beach. They're having the time of their lives, but this is unfortunately a demonstration of what life used to look like. We jump to a car speeding down the road with the main character Brian, with his brother Danny, Brian's girlfriend Bobby and their friend Kate, a lot of names to remember off the bat, but we roll. They are heading to the beach shown at the start as it was where the brothers used to go, but as this movie came out in the early 2000s, they were using a map to navigate. For those who do not know, it's a bit of paper with squiggly lines and text, but anyway, as they are navigating their path they encounter a car parked in the middle of the road. There's a man standing outside of the car. Therefore Brian warns everyone to put up their windows as a safety precaution. He's traveling with his daughter and as he slowly walks closer to them, he explains that the car is out of fuel. After numerous warnings for the man to get back in his car, Kate notices that the daughter has the virus. In a state of panic, Brian speeds past the man, but he was able to get a swing at the car and damage the driver's side window. Not so long after this incident, their car breaks down. As Danny is repairing it, Brian thinks it's a good idea to have target practice. It's not like this will alert the infected or scavengers or anything, but anyway, with no luck with fixing the car, they begin to argue about their next move. One idea being that they should go back to the man, who has the infected daughter. Sounds like a good idea to me lol. Eventually, with no other choice they end up walking back down the road to find the same man as before. As they slowly approach him, he introduces himself and his daughter as Frank and Jody, but his mood changes when he figures out that they are there to steal the car. After trying to hijack the car, the man states that he picked up a radio transmission about a new emergency response center, with a new devised serum. Brian doesn't believe him, but he becomes defensive as he is adamant that he brings his daughter there, so they come to an agreement to lock them in the back throughout their journey. They begin their journey and the conversations are flowing, until Brian starts to get moody and talk shit to everyone, but Bobby wasn't having the disrespect and begins to hit him, causing them to almost crash the car. As a mixture of anger and frustration flood the vehicle, Kate storms off, with Danny following behind her. As he comforts her, they notice an abandoned car that they could loot for fuel and other supplies. Therefore Brian and Danny walk towards the car and attempt to lift fuel from it, but it's locked. To find the key, Danny searches inside, but as he opens the door he notices a deceased man, however he ignores this to get the keys from the ignition. Annoyingly, he has butterfingers and drops them, and as he's picking them up, the man wakes up and attempts to grab him, but he was able to get out in time. They set up camp later that night, and just as Brian and Bobby are about to have some playtime, they hear cars racing and gunshots in the distance. As these cars approach, they desperately put out their fire and watch as a man running away is one shot in the back by armed survivalists. The following morning, they are driving through an abandoned town and neighborhood, signaling just how deadly this virus is as it has wiped out most of the population. Eventually, they make it to the emergency center where the serum for the pandemic is rumored to have been developed. They take a cautious approach walking in as they aren't aware of who they will encounter. When they get into the school, medical equipment is scattered all over the place, but the area is completely empty. As they begin to investigate, deep suspenseful music plays, indicating that we might actually see some action. Just as they regroup, someone bolts past them, and with Kate being the smartest woman alive, she chases after them. To their surprise, they find a laboratory with a doctor and a few patients in it. Without hesitation, Frank explains to the man that Jody is infected and he advises that he brings her in. Although, they soon discover that the serum doesn't work and that the last remaining doctor is about to euthanize a group of infected children as well as himself. Rather than helping them, they let this happen as giving life is just a more painful death in this situation, or so the doctor says. We skip to Bobby and Jody talking in the car, until Jody begins to hyperventilate and shortly after falls to the ground. She needs her oxygen mask that is right beside her, and after a moment of hesitation, Bobby rips of the covers and gives her the mask. In doing so, Jody coughs up blood which lands on her. In a state of panic and with the group coming back to the car, she moves back to her seat and desperately puts the covers back up. Soon after they all regroup, Frank is forced to bring Jody to a portable toilet, but Brian uses this opportunity to leave them behind and take their vehicle. After decontaminating the car, they stop off at a hotel where they aim to stay the night. To pass time they go to the golf course and start firing golf balls at the hotel windows, but little do they know, one of the rooms have hazard suits, guns and a bunch of sanitary products, indicating that the hotel is occupied. Nighttime has arrived and somehow Brian is still playing golf, but as Danny and Kate are walking through the hotel, they see flashlights. They call out for Brian but soon realize it's not him and they start running. They end up hiding in a kitchen and were inches away from being caught, but they got lucky and were able to escape, or so they thought as they run into another armed survivalist. With Brian still being unaware of the situation, he starts walking back to the hotel but notices some unaccompanied vehicles that weren't there before. As he's looking around, an armed guard comes out and starts to walk over to his location, but he gets beat with a golf club. Brian questions him, but the other armed members walk out with Danny, Kate and Bobby. He's forced to get off the man and he's soon questioned about another member of their group. They soon discover that the other member was dead when they got to the hotel, and after determining that Brian and everyone didn't kill him, they are forced to leave. The survivalists get into an argument as a couple of them want to keep the girls, resulting in guns being pulled out. The person who wanted to leave the girls alone was forced to leave alongside the others. The girls are forced to strip, but the survivalists freak out as they discover that Bobby is actually infected due to a rash on her chest. Just as Brian was about to shoot these people, he notices the rash too and is in complete shock. They luckily let them go and they continue their journey. The next morning has come and they are still driving, somehow without having run out of fuel, but anyway, the silence in the car is loud as they sit in disbelief. Realizing that they need fuel, they pull up to a gas station and Danny discovers a grave. Kate walks over to him and after realizing the severity of the situation, she suggests to leave Bobby behind. Without any further thought, they get back in the car and leave without any fuel. After driving for no less than 10 seconds, Brian stops the car and demands that Bobby leaves. Everyone is visibly uncomfortable with what's happening as they refuse to look at her, but as she doesn't leave, Brian forces her out of the car. They give her food and survival advice then dip. As they drive through the desert with no town or buildings in sight, they notice a car driving towards them, and with them being low on fuel, Brian drives at them head on which forces them to stop. Danny walks towards the two women in the car and asks for some fuel. They politely decline and begin reversing, that is until Brian starts shooting at them. He unalives one of the women and forces the other one out of the car, but he is shot in the leg just before he kills her. Danny is in shock at what has just happened, but with Kate being unfazed she obtains the fuel from their car and they continue driving. Time is slowly running out for Brian but they luckily find a house that they can scavenge for medical supplies. The doors are locked but they see an open window on the second floor of the house, which they are able to get to by climbing on the car. As Danny climbs through the window, he notices an unalived woman with a shotgun sitting on a chair. He takes the gun and calls out for anyone in the house, but he sees movement in one of the rooms and walks over to it, only to find a cute little dog eating the remainders of presumably its owner. As he's about to leave the room, he spots medical supplies, but of course they are right beside the dog. He goes for them anyway, but whenever a container drops onto the floor, the dog attacks him, causing him to put it to sleep. RIP. He slowly walks out of the house after this and attends to his brother's aid by using the new medical supplies, but while treating his injury, Danny discovers that Brian is infected. This time round, he is completely unaware that he's infected, so he keeps quiet about it. As Kate is washing herself, Danny walks over and with a look on his face, she knew that he had the virus. They set up camp later that night, but Brian is starting to show signs of the virus as he becomes fatigued. They assume he's asleep so Danny walks over to him to grab the gun and the keys as they plan to leave him behind. As they're walking towards the car, Brian gets up and confronts them and just as they are about to start the car, they realize that they have the wrong keys. Danny gets out off the car and demands that he gives them the keys, but with no luck, Danny is forced to shoot him. The next morning, Danny and Kate arrive at the beach that they've been aiming to get to for the entire movie, but he realizes that without his brother, the place that was special to them as children was now desolate. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and remember to turn on notifications to get the best rap cinema updates.